Welcome back to another episode of the Information Addicts podcast. My name's Cassidy. I'm an information addict, and this is my podcast where I explore information, ideas, and beliefs and try to do those things more responsibly. It is good to be back with you in 2023. I took a little break at the end of 2022 because, well, my life got crazy. I produced 3 festivals and they were all really hectic. I helped film the opening of a comedy club. I got married. So, just little things. But yeah, I'm glad to be back and excited to be releasing more conversations. The first one I have to release to you today is something a little bit special because we're going to be talking about the Bridges of Meaning Festival. If you don't know, Bridges of Meaning Festival was a festival that I produced in Germany at the end of August. It was the first festival I ever produced as a head organizer, and it was a lot of fun, and the event went really well, but it didn't come without its complications. The week before the event, we had some issues as a group of activists presented complaints about our event lineup and some of the people in our surrounding community. And yeah, it was just a fun, joyous time dealing with those. I didn't know whether to talk about it, but since people are still chatting about, we figured maybe it's best to give a straight story and reflect on what happened during the festival. So to do that, I have myself and Matthias, the head organizers of Bridges of Meaning Festival, as well as Dennis, the current head admin of Bridges of Meaning, and Joey, the creator of Bridges of Meaning and former head admin. Go ahead, Matthias.
Yeah, I mean, you wrote to me, Cassidy, that like after the festival, we had some weeks where we were really busy and we weren't online on the Discord. And you wrote to me some weeks ago that we maybe should address the festival again and just make a debrief, what we think, how it went, and what we learned from it. And we discussed how we could do this, and you thought that we could maybe publish this on your channel or just have a talk and figure out later if we want to publish it. And then I had the idea maybe include Joey because I think his perspectives were helpful in the process. And then you had the idea also to ask Dennis, right?
Yeah, because I thought it was helpful too, because I think he got a lot of criticism for what happened. And I think it was too much criticism personally, but I think hearing his voice and his perspective and understanding that was important to have if we were going to talk about it live and have that be shared.
Right. Well, I want to start with a certain impression, and that is like the recordings of the German Bridge of Meaning Festival. They are produced now. They are ready to publish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they are for ticket holders. They already have them to watch, and they will be published soon. And I had the chance to watch them 2 days before, and I think it was really a good experience to watch these videos again because you got the spirit of the festival, and I think it was really you could really see the atmosphere of the festival. And for example, Mark Lefebvre talked about this, that he compared Peterson's biblical series to John Vervaeke's classroom lectures. Peterson, he was on stage, or also his university lectures, he was in front of an audience. While Vervaeke, you could tell the difference that he was only speaking to a camera, right? And when I saw the recordings of the Bridges of Meaning Festival in Germany, I really got this intimate atmosphere. We were like 40 people there, and Paul Vanderklay, Bernd Power, John Van Dunk, you, Cassidy, and Sarah, you were the speakers. And I think from the videos you get really this intimate atmosphere. And I think basically this that if you look at it from now, it was really it was a special experience. It was very, very good. What was your experience, Cassidy?
If I can add one thing, like you had us or we had to sign this waiver, like, and on the Friday afternoon when we got there, about being on camera and stuff like that, right? But
Well,
I know
no
that
one officially signed, but it was like
I
it
did.
was.
Anyways,
Oh, you did. Okay.
it doesn't matter. But what Matthias was talking about, the having the cameras there while still maintaining that intimate setting, like I didn't feel that was an obstacle at all. Having those cameras around, having people record the talks, but also the discussions that we had. Just like you said, I think there was a very intimate feeling throughout the whole weekend that didn't get disturbed really by anything we were doing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was running around a lot trying to keep things going. So I didn't get to participate in the way that maybe Dennis did or you did, where you're in those conversations actively. I had some, but not as much as
I was running around as well.
Yes,
Constantly.
I figured you probably were too, but you were there sometimes at the nights and in the campfires where I would go home and recharge. And but I could see what was going on, and I saw these little moments where people were connecting and like the relationship were happening. And then once the festival closed, getting to sit down and have a drink with everybody and eat food and kind of debrief about everything that happened. You could just tell something really special happened. And I think that was a thing that kind of gave me hope and kept me going after everything closed and we started getting more criticism about all of it. It was like I had a taste of what happened there. I was there through all of it, and I saw the good that came from it. And like that surpassed any negative emotions or negative feelings I had based on the things that happened before, during, and after that were considered not as positive. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's my feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Dennis?
Yeah, no, what I think happened there was just good in general. Like we had a beautiful 3 days. And there's still people I'm chatting with. I barely talk to any, in any other occasions, but you have created this bond, and that happened when we were there. And it's probably something you'll always take with you, and maybe with the next event, some people you already know will come to that one as well, and you've already established a connection with each other, which I think is just really valuable. But even with that, like the conversations that were had and the things that were shared between each other while not fully knowing one another, there was some really deep and personal stories being shared. People really being vulnerable about the struggles they went through, the things they were still struggling with. So we can get to the negativity in a little bit, but we were talking just before the others joined about what would have happened if we didn't have had the festival. Would that have been better if he would dug our heels in the sand and said, well, we're not going to make any concessions if we're not going to do this, if you're not going to do that, then we won't come. Would that have been a better option? And I don't think that would have been better. Anyways, like I told you, I think getting 40 or 50 people there, being encouraged by the connections they made with each other, being encouraged by the conversations they had, will make them stronger, or made them stronger going home, having gotten a banner set. Just having that moment of being vulnerable with somebody and getting strength from that, being encouraged, and maybe that will make it so that whenever they come into a situation, and now in their own personal lives, once after the festival, where they have to say no, they can say no. Or if they have to stand their ground, they can stand their ground. And I think that's much more valuable than winning one minor little battle in a supposed culture war,
Yeah, I mean, and I was talking to Dennis too. for me, it depends on what concession you're asking me to make. There's some
Yeah.
concessions I would not make. For example, if someone asked me to do platform somebody I didn't feel deserved that, I'm not going to do that just, lightly, but it really, I think for me, I'm not, I tend to be more right leaning politically. But I'm not anti-left. I don't want to see everybody destroyed and call everybody stupid. I'd rather have conversations and try to find some common ground. And I recognize that even if someone has a different idea and belief than me, they still have something of value to bring to the table and something to to be discussed with. And it teaches us something about being human. And I think some of the anger that was coming, I mean, I think it didn't take into account the complexity of relationships that were happening there, but it also ran with, I think, certain narratives that weren't true, because at the end of the day, we didn't make any concessions. There was no demands made of us. A third party decided to make decisions, and that's fine for us. We don't feel like we have to force anybody to associate with us if they don't want to. That's not that's not what I'm about. But I like I was talking with Dennis, like if there was some way to come to a compromise that can help us stay and create that experience for 40 people that didn't go past a moral line that I felt was okay to cross, am I not going to have that conversation? I think that's cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Mhm.
I wanted to add, we can talk about this more, but I also wanted to add to Dennis, to the question, like, would it be better to have not the festival done? Well, like, if you ask about the outcomes of the festival, I think what I can tell is like that the German community really connected there even more. And like after the festival, they now have a voice chat once a week where I don't even have to be involved. They do it on themselves. They also started a book club, and like the people they got together there, they are planning now estuaries in different places, like in South Africa, in Poland, and in various places. Switzerland started its own estuary afterwards, and I think the Dutch met afterwards again as well. Dennis, is that right?
Well, we met at church, and so Cassidy and Ferdy invited a couple of us, and so we met there, where Bas and Sarah was at the festival also were. Prior to the festival, we obviously had the meetup in Utrecht, where I think what was about, how many people were there, like 30 or so.
Yeah, it was a good number.
And people are still talking about setting up like a Dutch estuary. The thing is, there's not really a one central location. Like the people are pretty much spread over all of the Netherlands, so we have to find a central location, and then you have to actually arrange a location, making sure that you can get together like every couple of weeks or so. So they're doing that now. We had a couple of discussions about that, but there are plans to set something up.
Well, and to sort of riff off what Matthias said, I think not only did we see there was benefits for the people who came to the festival and participated and were, interested in estuary, but I felt like we made a connection with a lot of the people who worked at the event center and had relationships. Like there was a lot of people working there who were really excited that we were there, wanted us to come back. And I think that's so important, of like fostering those relationships and creating that space where we can, have different ideas, but still respect each other and show respect to one another in those things. And,
Well, sorry. Yeah, I cut you off.
No, go ahead. I was just going to repeat myself probably.
Okay. So my absolute highlight was a friend of mine who came from my church, where I go occasionally here in my hometown, and he didn't know of Bridges of Meaning before at all. He didn't know of Paul van der Clay, nothing. And I invited him to come, and he came on Saturday, and he was a bit late, and the first estuary round was already going. And I said to him, just join one group and get involved. And he went to the table with Job and Paul van der Klee, sat down, talked for 2 hours, was there over the whole day, and he was really excited about it. And 1 week afterwards, I spoke to him, and he said, like, Matthias, before I was always at church. I was kind of hesitant because I grew up here and I knew all the faults and the messiness, and I was kind of thinking, am I right here? And now that I was at this festival, I think I will go next year. I will be a full member of the church again. I will really see the positive and try to work for the best. And I think, yeah, that's my personal highlight, because someone of my church connected to the community, and I think that's what these events can accomplish, that you can go there for 1 or 2 days and get a taste of the experience, and you don't have to be online for months before. You can just join the conversation. I think that's one of the good things about the events. And also what BoM from the festival, I think another outcome was, for example, that the whole European tour of Paul van der Klee over England, especially, they had multiple estuaries there, and Tayo set up an estuary there as well. And for example, BoM, and BoM is important because BoM, yeah, I mean, BoM was one of the speakers who got some criticism of this group, that made some criticism about the lineup. And I mean, if you talk to the people who were at the festival, everybody is positive about it. Tuma Wies is positive, BoM is positive, Paul van der Klee. And BoM, he starts now to develop also an idea for an event at Tbilisi in Georgia, where he wants to invite people and make some kind of event there as well. So I think, yeah, so many good things came out of it.
Yeah. Joey, I mean, I know you weren't at the event, but you started the Bridges of Meaning Discord with the hope that people would eventually meet in person. So how is it for you to see these events starting and the connections coming? I'd love to hear your perspective from somewhat of an outsider, but also deeply connected to all of this.
I mean, this one was really cool just because of what Paul and especially John Van Donk. I think John Van Donk's overwhelming insistence that more things needed to happen. It's frustrating sometimes, but it's absolutely an asset as well. So it was awesome to see. We had a few smaller events in our area. We had a meetup before a Jordan Peterson show one time in San Jose area, where I think we had about 40 people there, but then only about 10 of them ended up going to the show afterwards. So that was probably the biggest one I've been to. We have the local meetup that, of course, gets pretty well attended because Paul's local as well. And then we've been in touch with the Fresno group. There was a group in Grass Valley that we were in touch with for a while. All these different little's not even the right word. All these different, smaller, more intimate groups of people are getting together, and they're doing these conversations and stuff. And something that I thought of for the first time as Dennis was talking about it, and this might even be a good analogy for it. I kind of feel like what we're doing is not just it's not just academic, it's not just spiritual. A bit of it is kind of like a sport. It sounds like when you're talking about people who know of each other and they're getting together from distant, far away, and then they're kind of cooperating, somewhat competing, but we're very, very heavy on the cooperative side. It feels more like a sport, and getting some good exercise and working some muscles that you've never worked before. When you get those people together, like when you get people together and they're doing that for the first time, that's where that reinvigoration comes from. And what I love to hear the most is the stories about, oh, this person came, and then, like Matthias said, he invested more into his church. That is not BoM. He invested more into his family. Like we have tons of people now who they said that, okay, their experience in talking with us helped kind of pump them up and get them out of a funk and invest into the people that are into their personal lives. It wasn't it was never supposed to be about Bridges of Meaning. It was never supposed to be about the meetup itself. It was always supposed to be about helping people redo what we did in the Sacramento group, because for us it was so successful. But yeah, so I love hearing it. I love the tour. It was kind of awesome to see. You know, I was only watching on YouTube at the time because I was very busy with work and I was moving to a new place, and you know, it's just like it was too much to be heavily invested, which is why I did leave so suddenly. It would have been much more difficult for me to even manage a leave rather than just say, hey, here's the responsibility, take it. Yeah. So, and Dennis, I just want to, I really have to give so much kudos and so much credit to Dennis. You've done an absolute awesome job with it. I know it's hard. I'm probably the only other person who knows how hard that particular role is. And I just want to say you've done a really awesome job. It's the thing I'm proudest to see is how like the admin group is treats each other so well and is so helpful to each other and backing up each other's decisions and disseminating the responsibilities. And then when somebody is willing to step up to the plate on something, everyone else backs them up. And I do think, going back to the controversy stuff, I was very disappointed in some of the people who were just criticizing online, who have not have not set up anything like this, have not participated in anything like this through this group, and only had criticisms for the handling of that. Because in my mind, I think the most important thing is that the local people who are willing to put in the work, those are the people who get to make the decisions. And there was a lot of talk of Joey wouldn't have let this happen, or Joey wouldn't have done it this way. And I disagree with that 100%. Like, I would have backed you guys up on those decisions. I mean, there's little micro things that I would have handled slightly differently. You know, so some people, I do think that everyone being in Europe was kind of a problem, because obviously some of the people who were upset were in America. And if I had more time to devote to it, I would have handled those relationships just a little bit with longer conversations, so everyone walked away feeling a little bit happier. But ultimately, I think things were handled overwhelmingly correctly. And so, you know, if not an A+, definitely an A. And so I don't know, I think that's that. But you know what? It's also not my decision anymore. I handed over the reins to that to Dennis, and it's his decisions ultimately. And so, you know, that's how it gets to be handled. And if he's backing up other people, then I'm personally proud to see that. And that's
I also want to thank Dennis and Cassidy, because Joey, you and we talked last week, and you gave me very helpful feedback, and yeah, you also said that you thought we handled the festival good. But yeah, I think when I look back, what I could have done differently is maybe make one or two more statements that, well, it was my idea to bring up the festival, to develop the festival. I had the idea. Cassidy joined me very early on, and it was also her project from then on, but it was my idea. And I also, I made a lot of the decisions, and I could have made that more public. And by that way, I could have supported Dennis and Cassidy maybe even more. But yeah, I mean, there were different things why I wasn't always able to be that much in public, especially after the festival. I had some personal tragedies, but when I look back, I wished I would have done that more. And I thank Dennis very much, and I'm sorry for all the trouble you got because of my festival.
No, you definitely don't need to feel sorry about that. I mean, reflecting back on the festival, what led up to it, but also what happened afterwards, was that there were a few things being conflated in my view. Like, you were the festival organizers. Anything that happened in terms of the festival, like decisions being made, feedback coming from the venue owners, of other partners, that's up to you to deal with. Anything that's impacting in the Discord is being discussed by us as the admins. But how the festival is being handled, that's up to you. right? But then how things got not necessarily communicated, but maybe interpreted by some people. And I don't mean to shift the blame to you, but like that we are this one cohesive group. The Bridges of Meaning leadership was responsible for the festival, was responsible for handling any controversies, was responsible for making any decisions that we did. And sure, we made some decisions, but other decisions you guys made. I mean, we stood behind those as well. But then it gets a bit messy about, and obviously a lot of people are not privy to the discussions that we have on the admin server, right? Or discussions we have in private about these kinds of things. And so a lot of the criticism, I think, was unfairly addressed to certain people without fully knowing what went into certain decisions or how certain things were actually handled with the actual timeline as well on when things happened. And so that makes it so that you end up in discussions about things that didn't really happen. You end up talking about people that were not involved, or the other way around. You're not talking about people who were involved, and that just gets messy really quickly. And then if that goes beyond a couple of days, you get lost in the drama, and at some point it's not about what actually happened anymore. It's just you're arguing with each other for whatever reason.
Yeah.
We have no shortage of people who like to argue. So.
No.
Well, that was the hard part, I think, for myself, because I think me and Matthias both had a lot of personal things going on after the festival closed. I was getting married. I was traveling abroad.
I mean, and those things we knew of those things. I think Matthias had already announced he was going to take a break after the festival. We knew you guys were getting married. Job had already announced he was going to take a break. So we knew that was
yeah, we
happening
just didn't,
anyways.
We didn't expect the thing that happened the week before, right? And so it became this thing where it was like, do we say something and we get in this fight, or do we just focus? And for myself, it was like, no one is in immediate danger. People are going to say things about me and what I did and what we did, and there were a lot of things that people got right. There were a lot of people got wrong. But to me, it was like, let it happen, let things cool down, and if I need to talk about it, I will. And
at the same time, Cassidy and I, we both offered to everybody who had criticisms, we offered them to talk personally, and not everybody wanted to talk. Not everybody wanted to talk. Some people wanted to make rage videos and not talk.
Which happens.
It happens.
Private discussions don't get very many views, so.
That's true.
But on the term of privacy, like that ends up being a very important thing too. And like one of the things that I like about the admin group and the people that are involved in like other leadership positions, both formal and informal, and even some of the people who are very, very critical of us. I give everyone a lot of credit for, I haven't seen anything yet where somebody says, hey, I'd like to talk to you about something in private, and then the person who was talked to in private goes and airs that specific stuff in public. So what we are talking about is that, yeah, people have rights to their opinions. There's multiple ways to solve a problem. So that's not even saying that anyone else's suggestions were necessarily wrong, even though I do think that the decisions that ultimately ended up being made were very, very close to perfect. Yes, it could have been done differently, and you can argue endlessly about the way something should or should not have been done. But again, that's why I think it has to go back to the local people are the ones who are empowered. And on the flip side of that, when somebody asks, hey, I have to take a break to deal with XYZ problem, please don't tell anyone that I'm dealing with this thing. Like that's that's very important to me.
Yeah.
And it's very important to a lot of people. And I don't think you can play, again, I'm going to call it play. These discussions are play because it's not, it's a supplement to your personal life. It's a supplement to your social life. It shouldn't be your entire life. But when you're going to play these games where you're talking to people and talking about things that are personal, you need to have both that level of trust and that level of suspicion that trust is not automatically given. Like that trust is earned over, in my case, like in my opinion, a long period of time of interacting with people. And I trust the three of you, and I trust Paul like entirely. And like that, sometimes people you trust don't do exactly what you want them to do. And like part of being an adult is just getting over that and letting them be their own person. Because if you want to be independent and sometimes crotchety and have strong opinions about things and stand your ground on stuff, you have to give other people the space to do that too. It doesn't really have a conclusion, but I think that those things are all important factors.
And I think it should be said that me and Matthias, at the end of the day, were willing to take responsibility for whatever happened based on our decisions. We did this thing, and so we tried our best to think very critically about what was the right thing to do. And we did not just make decisions lightly. We were talking to a lot of people, including Dennis and Joey, trying to get their opinions, trying to really figure out how we should make decisions. And, you know, I had already had a sense and a respect to do this, but on Joey's request, because Matthias was in the forefront, he had the strongest relationships, he was in Germany on the ground, I gave my opinion strongly, but I always deferred to what he wanted to do. And I'm very grateful to have him there to balance me out. I think we balanced each other out and worked really well together in making these decisions. And was it perfect? I don't know, but I think we did the right thing, what seemed like the right thing every moment. And that's where I say I have no regrets and I stand by everything we did. No questions, no matter what chaos came after, and far more good came out of it than chaos.
And to be clear too, I just want to point out that was you reached out to me and we just discussed personally because we keep in touch with each other. Like that wasn't, I rejoined the admin server, but not until I think like late October or something, because Rick asked for me to come back after we started the in-person meetups. So now I am giving my opinion on current events and stuff, but that wasn't the case as of the time of the festival. That was just purely people who know each other talking to each other.
Yeah, so I respected Joey's opinion and I wanted to get his sense of what was going on. He had no idea about it, and he kept that all very confidential and private, and gave a lot of good advice. And you know, I think me and Matthias were both grateful for it in the process of it.
And I think that's what Paul alludes to in a number of his videos as well. It's what we do in general, right? There's nobody. Well, in the end, sometimes I do make a decision, but it's not. I'm not vetoing anything. You know, it's what does everybody think? What can I take away from that? Or maybe somebody suggests something that most of us haven't thought about, that I haven't thought about, but is a good idea. Then we're gonna decide on that. You know, that's just how we do things, and it's the same happened with the festival and the way in which we communicated to the server, the way you guys communicated to the event goers, and even afterwards, like you said, Matthias, offering people who had criticisms to be open for conversation. And well, I mean, like you said, if nobody reaches out, or maybe only a few do, then yeah.
Well, and we did that with the people who brought the initial complaints too.
Yeah.
It was both-sided, and no one took us up on it.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, right, Cassie, I remember like we said, like, I mean, we talked to the owner, and we also made very clear that, yeah, okay, we will explain to you your questions, we talk with you, but we will stand to our lineup. And if you don't want us, we will go, I don't know, we will go on a hiking tour in Landau, or we will meet on a public place, we will be in the city. but we will stick to our schedule and we will stick to our speakers. And that was very clear. And we were joking about it some days before. Okay, when we have the festival, and then when activists show up, yeah, I mean, if they make their demonstration, yeah, okay, do it. We are willing to have a discussion with you. And it's funny that somehow afterwards, it almost sometimes felt also like dealing with activists and not with community members at some points. With
in our own community, I mean.
Yeah, like people connecting dots that it fit their narrative, and then not willing to talk to people and listening and getting a real picture. That was sometimes the impression.
I think that's a good observation.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that was the unfortunate thing about it, is where we want to have those conversations. Now we don't want to have them in the wrong spirit. And maybe them coming and having conversation, being there, would have created a spirit that would have been helpful, and it would have, not been, good. Well, especially if they're protesting, that probably wouldn't have gone super well. But, it was sad to see that just shut off based on a perception of what they thought it was. And then seeing what actually happened, it was like, well, what can you do? Like, just take joy in the thing that we have found and that we have experienced, and, recognize it's very messy and people are messy, and,
Yeah, and like Paul, for example, said, yeah, I mean, Paul van der Klee, he said in some of the early videos about the drama, that basically he thinks it probably wasn't such a big deal. And if you listen, for example, to Burn Power, he's also very relaxed and says, yeah, it was small complaints of activists, but who cares? And if you are not happy, or if what you perceive doesn't satisfy your convictions, then this is one of the approaches of Paul van der Klee. It's also, I think, Joey's approach. If you don't like what you see, start your own Bridges of Meaning server, start your own event, and deal with people as you like. Do it differently, do it as you like. And if that turns out better, more power to you.
And we'll even support you. Like,
exactly.
We won't do all the work for you,
yeah.
But we'll go on. If you start something new, we'll touch on it, we'll reference it, we'll let people post links onto it.
More power to you.
I've invited everyone who like has problems with me personally to share, start your own thing, give us a link, we'll put it in the links channel, and anyone who's interested in joining from our community can join your community. But like, Bridges of Meaning is not quite the same as a normal community. Estuary stuff is much closer because it's in person. The online communities are probably something else, and we probably don't have a good word for it yet, even though we're people who like to come up with words for everything. But well,
and what it ties into the discussions that have been going on for the last couple of weeks about what is the Bridges of Meaning Discord server, and what is this little corner of the internet. And more specifically to the server, I think it's much more transitory space than it is a place of residence, right? And that was always, at least in my understanding, the intent of the server. And
it's a nearly impossible thing to pull off. And it's a very, very hard thing to pull off for an extended period of time, of like, oh, this is somewhere you show up to, and then you build stuff, and then you leave it. It's like, that's a hard sell. But
yeah.
No, but then inevitably you come at a point where, how we've been going now for like 4 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Great.
People are maturing, people are growing, and then something like what happened with the festival, even though it was very, very, very small, something happens that triggers people about what is this place, what should we do, what should we have done, how are we going to act going forward. And I think that's where, like, what has happened over the past couple of months, I think it's actually good what happened. People breaking off who have different views or different visions of where we are supposed to go. Like, they are creating their own spaces now, and it's attracting people, and maybe they can create that something that they are yearning for, right? But it's not this space. This space is something else. So what I tried to say was how, going on for a couple of years, it was just inevitable that at some point we were going to encounter something that was going to make it so that people were either triggered by something or were going to break off from us anyway. And maybe this, with a lot, a couple of the other dramas going around that time, was just, a catalyst.
I think, and this might be an American thing, it might be a religious person thing, it might be a religious American thing, but like, there's, in a lot of movements or a lot of groups or a lot of things that are newly forming, there's always a group of people who want to push other people to become martyrs for the cause. And that's something that always strikes me the wrong way. I don't have a ton to say about it because it's a difficult thing to verbalize. But like, I don't know what the experience of schooling in the EU is, but in America, like, even from a very, very young age, like, they immediately start having you write essays that have like action statements in them and stuff like that, and then they try and turn every school child into an activist of some kind. I think that's where a lot of the woke culture comes from too, is like, oh, we have to know something. We have to, in our youthful ignorance, have to both know something and fight for it. And when that happens, you end up being a tool of somebody else's game. And it's not what I'm about. And there's lots of people on bridges, in this little corner, in Estuary, who have lots of very, very strong beliefs about different things. And most of them are positive, a few of them are negative, and they're all kind of mixed together too. So it's hard. But personally, I don't want to be part of activism projects where we're trying to set up a situation where somebody is like either socially or literally martyred. And I really just don't want to be that involved with people who that's what they want to do. And I'm not even saying like they're only volunteering other people. Some of the people are very, very into their beliefs, and I do believe them that if people came for them, that they would stand up for what they believe in. But unless I'm on board with what they believe in 100%, I'm not jumping out of a trench to go charge a machine gun nest for them. Like, I'm just not doing that. And you can say what you want about that. It's like, I have my own personal beliefs and they don't line up with yours to the level where I'm willing to self-sacrifice that much. However, I'm willing to give parts of myself in order to make like people around, like people who have some stuff in common with stronger, and to work on myself and to help other people work on themselves. But that's really the limit of what I think an online space like ours is capable of. I don't think we are we're not a replacement family. Paul's talked a lot more lately about him being an online pastor, and other people are pushing him to be an online pastor. I think that, like, I get the sentiment, and I think, again, as a supplement, that's okay. But I think people who are jumping headlong into Paul Vanderklay as my pastor, and I only watch him on YouTube, I think at the personal level, that's a mistake, and they probably shouldn't be doing that. Unless it's a bridge that they're passing over for in terms of something that's more complete.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, activism is a very tricky thing. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. I have had a lot of different experiences with activism, not personally myself, but being very seeped in cultures. I mean, I went to San Francisco State University, people. There were protests every day on the campus, and I see, and I've worked with businesses who've dealt with activism and those sort of things. And I certainly can sympathize with the ability to want to fight for something you believe in. or you think is right. But the way that activism is formed and the limitations it has some complications that I don't think is the most helpful for the conversation. And when you're talking about bridges of meaning, mixing that into it is really difficult to have those two things coincide, because you're trying to meet people with different beliefs where they're at to gain some understanding and figure things out. And if it's always aimed at, advocating for this thing, full stop, no questions asked, well, that's going to be difficult. I think it comes the same if you come to it in a religious frame from like an evangelical mindset of like, well, I'm here to convert people. I'm a Christian. I have nothing personally wrong with evangelicalism and seeing people come to faith, but if you're participating in estuary in that spirit, well, you're not going to get the most out of what that thing has to offer and what you can learn about people.
Well, and on the religious point specifically, evangelicalism, on BoM specifically, evangelical to what? There's more flavors of different religious groups, and then even within those groups, there's all these other people who are, oh well, we're Catholic, but we don't support the Jesuits or something, or like, I mean, you can get down to such levels of minutia. So there ends up being two groups of people on BoM. There was the incredibly open-minded and willing to have everyone and willing to give everyone second and third and fifth chances, and on the other hand, there was like dozens and dozens of groups of people who all wanted to kick like 25 to 50% of the people just off the server entirely. And the people who were like, they were targeting to kick off were just, it covered everyone. It's like, well, that person shouldn't be here. That person shouldn't be here. And so like, that's something I don't think a lot of the people who aren't as involved in leadership and just want to be the idea guys who give, oh, well, I'm just going to give you more feedback on stuff. I don't think they really take that into account, that there is very few sets of, part of the reasons I never came up with sets of rules, and I think that tradition has continued of no written rules, is because there's no written set of rules outside of like no pornography and no spamming, that kind of stuff. There's no rules out there that wouldn't end up kicking off a huge and critical part of the, again, I'm going to use community in quotes because I just don't believe it's not a community like that, but like for the sake of argument, for the online community, you can't kick 30% of the people off and still have it be something. It would just kind of fall apart. And it's weird too, because then, okay, well, what kind of thing falls apart like that? Sure, a Tower of Babel falls apart if you pull pieces out of it. But I mean, in America, we've seen this a lot too. Cities die if you pull large parts of it. And I do think it's more like a city, it's more like a town, where there's all these different storefronts and there's all these different neighborhoods and there's all these different pieces of it that go together and can form something awesome. But the individual house, the individual building is not the thing that makes that place cool, or it's not the place that makes it enjoyable and rich and rewarding to hang out in. It's the total picture.
Matthias, Dennis, any thoughts on this line of thought?
Well, being the server admin now, I try to do as much as I can in the tradition of Joey. Right, I'm a proponent of Joeyism, and that's about rules and such. Those are discussions we have had around that time as well, and the other dramas that I mentioned earlier were bans or reverting bans, stuff like that, and people sometimes do push back on that we don't have any rules, because then it's very arbitrary about how we go about things. But and I tell them, even if we had rules, it's about, are we doing things according to the letter of the law or in the spirit of the law? And it doesn't matter which way we're going to go, there's always somebody pushing back on the way we do things. That's just how things are going to be.
Especially in that kind of group where you've got a lot of arguers, a lot of like, that group can't exist if you don't have that amount of pushback.
No, and about the idea guys, those are also often the ones that amongst the first who have, criticism, and that's fine. That, helps us grow. That makes us, so that we keep thinking about what are we doing. But it's also very easy to always be critical, and like Joey said, not be in a position of leadership where you do have to have certain discussions or do have to make certain decisions. Might even be good to sometimes put those kind of people to work, give them a job, give them something to do, Yeah, that's about all.
And this is probably some obscure BoM history, but that's actually how you became admin in the first place. Was I kicked somebody and you gave me some very good, very insightful, but very respectful feedback. And it did make me pause for a second. And I didn't reverse it, but I did make you admin.
No, yeah. So if people want to know how to become one, that's the model.
Yeah.
I think, Dennis, you and I, we became at the same time admins, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
About a year ago, I think.
Yeah. I mean, what can I say to this? I mean, I'm still not very often on the Discord still after the festival. I said this to Joey already, that I somehow, when I look into the Discord, I focus on the German community, which is really good, in a good development. And the German community is somehow like the early bridges of meeting community, because it's very small and intimate and very personal. And
grassroots.
Yeah, and that's nice, that's fine. But at the same time, I also don't have enough time to focus on that, because I mean, on the one hand, it's self-sustaining. People are running it, like yeah, there are enough people who take responsibility, and I really focus on real life things. Like we have the estuary in Mannheim here. We meet once a month. Yeah, family, church, and that was also one thing. It was too much at some point, the online thing, and with the event, setting up the event, and afterwards I realized I had to change some things, and my priorities have changed, and so I think in some ways I have crossed the bridge, but I want to stay connected to it. And Cassidy and I, we have plans for next year as well, so there will be another event, so we have things planned. Yeah,
I mean, we already have tickets sold, so we got like 5 tickets sold, so we're doing something.
No, but I think, like what you said, Matthias, I think that's a success story. You needed it for a time. Now you've set up things in your life so that you don't need the space anymore. And I hope that's the case for a lot of people. And unfortunately, sometimes there's people that fall away that don't have that, and that's terribly sad. But I don't think you should necessarily feel guilty about moving on, if you even do so. But because, for instance, we've got Danny as an admin in the German community now, right? And so this is natural succession, basically.
You created your replacement, Matthias.
No, but that's how things go, and who knows who will be the admins a year or 2 years from now, what we'll be doing at that point of time. I think that's part of the journey, part of the story of the server, is that as more and more of us move on and people take our places, that it will remain a self-sustaining place. And like I told you guys on the admin server a couple of weeks back, I needed to take a break as well, just to refocus things in my own personal life. So I still kept checking in every now and then, and then you see, okay, there's such people still discussing things, people still arguing, but people are also self-correcting, and the meetups are still happening, the online chats or the voice chats are still happening. The place won't break down if a couple of us move on, as long as, at least I hope, as long as we have things in our own personal lives that fill that hole that the server filled for such a long time.
I mean, to add on that, I want to see Bridges of Meaning continue and continue to bring value to people, you know, who were in places like I was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, what have you. But I also will say, if Bridges of Meaning falls apart tomorrow, you know, I'm okay with that if it helps people ground somewhere else, because I do want it to see it be a bridge. I don't want people to get stuck there. Make Bridges of Meaning a church, make it the thing that fully encompasses their life. There's a lot of value to it. There's a lot of good to it, but I really want to see people do more and take that and help them fully embody their life, not live on the internet or live in these tiny worlds where we're constantly flipping stones and nuancing theology to the nth degree. I want something more for people. I know we kind of moved on past the activism stuff, but I did want to say one thing about the activism, and it's really to give credit to the venue that hosted us. They're very focused on activism, which I'm fine with. And they did a lot to work with us, to give us, you know, the most grace that they could with everything and stop spreading of more outrage into their community, create a bigger issue for us. And that is huge to me. I think that showed a lot of integrity and their willingness to meet, you know, us, even if they had different ideas, they needed to draw lines for their community of their association. The fact that they went out of their way to really try and make sure that it didn't become a problem for us is huge. And that's something I don't think people know or are talking about. They think, you know, they've got a narrative of, you know, it's endless and we gave in to the monster, but it's so much more complicated than that. And I think there are a lot more people, even if they're very heavily activist minded, who do want to see things come together and create spaces to have better conversations. And I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Matthias, but that's something that resonated with me and I was really grateful for, that they were willing to work with us and that they were willing to be so kind and generous to us in the face of it all.
That's a very specific spot too. I'd like to hear from all three of you, just kind of like, what did the venue do that made them good hosts? Because I think like being a good guest and being a good host is something that the world's rapidly losing. And I think that's something that we're all kind of exploring with estuary and types of things like that too. So Matthias, I think you have the closest relationship. What did they do as good hosts? And like, let's give them some props too.
Well, a lot of things. I mean, you have to understand that like the complaints came from
how did you meet them to start with, just to give a little bit of the context
well
too?
You know, I have a personal relationship with the owner of the venue. I know him from from really when I was a child. I was on this Christian holiday camp action where he was one of the organizers and I was a participant. And I got the news from some friends that he built this center some years ago, and I thought it was a good place to host the event because it was kind of Christian connected, but also they host different concerts and cultural events, and they have all the gear and the infrastructure you need to have a conference or a concert as well. So, and I think what Cassidy said is very true, and you have to understand that the complaints come from a small group that is also involved in the community, but that doesn't speak for the whole community. And what props can we give this community? I mean, Cassidy, they were very open when we came there, and there are also people living on the ground, and they supported us with everything we needed to have, right? With they walked us around, they showed us where we could organize stuff, where we basically how everything works.
they accommodated our requests. They let us move trampolines. They, they gave us grapes that they had like hand grown in their gardens. Like they just showed us so much kindness, and they gave us a lot of trust too, where they really let us go and work and operate there how we needed to do that, and trusted us that we would honor their rules and what they had asked from us. And I think for me, that was huge and something I did not want to overstep or break that trust in any way. But I mean, there was a couple guys who lived on in the house and were there every day. And I mean, I don't speak any German. They speak mostly only German, and having to communicate them and talk to. And luckily I had some volunteers who like could speak German who could help me, but they were always so willing to, take the steps to help us get what we needed to. And if they didn't have something, think through a solution. I think they even gave us pointers of like how to set up certain things, and they were just very kind. And we tried to show that kindness to them as well and give it back.
I guess that's a good point too. What did you three observe that you would say made the people who attended this festival good guests for the place that was hosting it?
Well, I want to add one more thing to the host, because I think they wanted to entertain people or speakers they were at first look maybe somewhat uncomfortable with, and I think that's something we can all take away from that is, are we willing to do that as well? Are we willing to entertain other people or conversations about certain points of view that we are uncomfortable with? And big props to them that they were willing to do that. I mean, it's 40 people coming to their venue, 40 people that they don't know, that are coming from all over Europe, even the US, with certain complaints coming in that paints us or them in a certain light, and they were still willing to give us that opportunity. So yeah, just wanted to add that.
On the guest aspect, does anyone have any insights? Or
I think from what I observed, there was a couple things that I was very happy with how the people came. Like, first of all, they came and were respectful of the certain rules. And there wasn't a ton of rules, but they were respectful of the certain things that they were doing. And, they were willing, if they were going to do something. Someone was fire blowing at one point, and they went out of their way to ask, is this okay? And they were totally fine with it. But, their willingness to ask and make sure that they weren't pushing boundaries to get wild and crazy or something. There's also the aspect of the generosity that they showed to other people when, because community members would sometimes come in and just hang out, and they treated them as if they were the people from Bridges of Meaning, sharing food, sharing conversation, not putting any assumptions on them from the beginning. And that was kind of lovely to see. And the last thing, their willingness to help and clean up and make the space better than we found it.
Clean toilets even, yeah.
Yes, they cleaned toilets. They picked up trash. They went and helped us move things back to where it was. There were so many people who stayed after and went out of their way to help us make this as spotless as possible when we left. And I was very grateful for that.
Yeah, just being hospitable as the guests, that something that I really cherish. I remember this one moment. I think there was a talk ongoing, so we were all facing, I think it was Bern at that time, and there was some guy from the community who was standing at the back of the tent, and he had like eyes this big, and he was looking like, what the heck is going on? But he was really interested, really engaged with what was happening. And I think it was Job who went up to him and said, well, come sit with us, we'll pull up a chair, we have some extra food, go out your way, get some, just be part of what we're doing. And I think that's just the story of the whole weekend is just captured in that little moment.
Mm. What do you think, Matthias?
Yeah, good guess. I mean, what Dennis has described, I think, was good to see. That I think on Saturday evening, some more community, like from the host event community, were part of the event and even joined the conversation with John Van Dunk and so on. And I think that was some good exchange, and one even connected with Job, I think, afterwards, and they messaged each other because Job also wanted to help him with a job offer for some IT job, and the guy was also interested in Bridges of Meaning and wanted even to join, I think, the server. Yeah, so I think there were some good exchanges happening. That was good to see. Yeah.
And I think it was lovely too when we left, the people who were the community, who were working there, who lived in the house, they really wanted to see us come back. And I think that was really encouraging to feel like, okay, I think we did do a good job of being guests and creating a relationship. And, you know, it could have gone so terribly. You know, there could have been presumptions, or could have been things, you know, we could have let whatever perceived slight get in the way of, you know, doing the right thing or enjoying the time and connecting with people. And it didn't happen. And that made me really happy. And we don't know whether we'll use the venue again or not. But either way, that I think was something that I left feeling like, okay, this is a win.
Mhm.
One of the last things I think we haven't talked about was a certain name change of a channel. Do we want to talk about that?
We can certainly.
It's part of the whole drama that occurred around the time.
I mean, one point is like, I think why the festival was also one reason why the festival was so confused with the Bridges of Meaning and with the admin stuff is the name, for example, right? I mean, the fact that it was named Bridges of Meaning Festival, I think that is something I would change when I look back at it. But at the same time, you don't know it before, so it is just how it turned out. And I remember, Joey, when I had the idea of the festival, I asked you, can I use the name Bridges of Meaning? You said, yeah, sure, use it. But now I think we learned that it's better to not name events like this. I think it's better to have the server Bridges of Meaning as one thing, and other things shouldn't be confused with it, I think.
No, I think you're right. We're not an official organization. We don't have any official positions as server, right? We don't hold any specific political, philosophical views. I mean, we're all individuals on there. And yes, a number of us make up, quote unquote, the leadership of the server. But that doesn't mean we all think the same or would act the same in certain situations or make, you know, certain decisions. The name change of the channel was already something we were discussing beforehand, but that discussion kind of died down with the event that was upcoming, Dutch meetup as well. Catherine was organizing her Thunder Bay event, and so there was so much going on, so we put that on the back burner. I think, Joey, you even mentioned that you had already asked Chad at some point in the past. Well, he according to him, and that didn't happen. Whatever.
Well, so I don't want to talk about too much about it, but I have talked to Chad about this, and we kind of rehashed it. But originally, the name of the channel, was Bridges of Meaning Channel, like the YouTube channel, and that did seem too official. And so I did ask Chad to change that to something else, and he chose Bridges of Meaning Hub. Kind of the understanding was at that time he was doing a lot of videos where he was basically doing like roundup videos of stuff that was going on specifically on Bridges of Meaning. he's since gone on, and especially during that time period, he was doing some more political stuff, which I think was just kind of one of the things that was back searched. He was doing a bit of his own like more comedy based stuff, which is fantastic. You should definitely check his channel. It's now Friday Morning Nameless, and it's an amazing channel. And now he's kind of gone back and he's doing more Bridges of Meaning Hub work, which is kind of ironic, but it's maybe better that he has a little bit more freedom, because Jeff has been an admin since the beginning, and he runs a YouTube channel and a podcast, and that doesn't use the Bridges of Meaning name. That uses Randos United. And then there's quite a few other people out there who are running other projects. Cassidy was doing a podcast for a while. I'm not sure what your future plans on that are, but that's not Bridges of Meaning. Paul Vanderklay's channel has never been Bridges of Meaning. I think technically I have a hold on a Bridges of Meaning name for a YouTube channel, but I don't think we've never used it, and I'm not sure that we really even want to. To your point, Dennis, I think it's a good thing to have when you have something that's completely open doors, like Bridges of Meaning is, even though we do kick people out once they come in, but they're open to come in, and if you start, there's no money involved in Bridges of Meaning. And if any of that started happening, it would become more of a stodgy, more of an organizational, more of a corporation type thing. And I don't know that it could I don't know it could do the positive and unique things that it does if it became just like something else. So I think keeping it kind of as is. The only thing that are Bridges of Meaning channels are the Discord servers. Seems appropriate. I think maybe there's some room to open up some kind of online forum or something like that with a little bit more permanence in terms of posts stay for a longer time, where Discord's very ephemeral. It kind of just, I don't know, yeah, I think that's whatever. Anyways, the posts come and go. But that's all up for discussion. But I think people should be encouraged to start their own projects, because I think people too, and even the individuals doing it, I don't think maybe they realize as much as they should how much the doing of the projects that they're starting is helping them as individuals, even if the things that they're starting aren't overwhelmingly popular. Like if you put out an hour-long video and it gets 100 views, and you think that that's nothing, that's kind of weird, because that's basically like you hosting 2 college lectures a week. That's
imagine sitting in a room and talking in front of 100 people.
Well, that's what Verdi tells me all the time. Just imagine you're in front of 200 people. That's a lot. Yeah, it is. It's kind of, but that kind of makes it scary. And you're like, oh wow, yeah.
And even if you produce something that only gets 10 views, or even if it only gets 3 or 6, it's still, you're putting yourself out there, and you're taking things. You're not just consuming information off the internet, you're reorganizing it, you're producing a product, and then and I use product loosely, and you're putting that back out there. And that's empowering. It's empowering in a way that you won't even realize until much later, probably. You a lot of what attracted the people to Bridges early on, and the original meetup, was part of it was to have discussions, but it wasn't to have academic discussions. It was kind of to do self-improvement. Sounds too cheap, but it's a place to practice being yourself a little bit. And I think a lot of us have experienced a good from that aspect of it. And I just want to, if people end up watching this, I do want to encourage people to keep doing that, even if you're not getting the results of your dreams. I think you're doing stuff, and it's helping you, I guess, evaluate for yourself. Be honest with yourself if the thing that you're doing is actually improving your life and making it better, and improving your spirituality, and improving whatever aspect of yourself that you want to be better. Is it building that up? And if it's building that up, it's good. And if it's tearing that down, then maybe don't invest your time there anymore. But you tried something, and I think that's important. So.
Yeah. Well, and I am still going to keep doing the podcast. And before I do that, I'm going to release some of my old videos that I made. And part of what I want to say with that is like most of my life I've made stupid online videos that make me laugh, or I made with my friends. And there are some of them that I'm wildly embarrassed and will never release. But what I learned from those things, it grew me to be what I am today. And it led me to be able to do this podcast and this thing that I get a lot of good from, and that grows me as a person. And I'm probably going to open myself up to doing other things too. So it's not just talking about big ideas, but I think there's something important in that. Like no matter what you're doing, even if it's silly comedy videos, like it's growing you as a person, it's changing you as a person. And certainly there is something to be said about the wisdom of what we post and how we create, and thinking about those things. Like that's certainly a conversation to have, but you can't get so caught up in that to stop you from creating, because it's just, you're never going to create anything if you're just constantly putting your wheels. Just to be clear, Chad did end up on a list for the complaints, but he, it wasn't, it was something that we could easily kind of talk through and explain. It wasn't anything that ended up hurting us. And the decision to ask him to change the name wasn't a festival decision where it was like, we're going to do this as a festival. We talked about it as admins, and, I certainly, made comments about it based on what happened. And I mean, Matthias and I talked about too, of like, well, was it wise for us to use the name Bridges of Meaning for the festival? And I'm kind of torn on it, where it was like, well, it was for that community. We weren't necessarily standing for it just because somebody uses that name. Did it mean that they were the advocate for that? No, and to draw that conclusion right away is not helpful, but it was helpful to kind of draw a line so that it didn't happen, where the fact that Chad was getting drawn into this, and we definitely could have talked to Chad better. And I've had conversations with him and we're cool. We with no bad blood there. We figured it out, but
I talked to him just I think a week ago. I talked to him again, and basically he said he's happy now how things turned out, and that it's also the discussion that it's productive, the discussion afterwards, that it was productive for him. And I mean, the only thing he said that he had wished, as you said, Cassidy, that people had taken more time to talk with him, but he's fine now, and he's satisfied. So yeah.
I think
Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think some of the ways he's responded has been the best response out of all of it. I mean, there's certainly things that made our jobs harder. I'm not going to say that didn't, but I respected him and his willingness to do it. And,
certainly, yeah, of course.
I didn't think he was wrong for doing how he did it. He certainly, he's a smart guy. I think he's a very smart guy.
That is great. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think the like I said, we'd already talked about that, but the timing of everything was extremely unfortunate. Yeah. And I communicated to him, and reflecting on that, could have done that better, definitely. He did take it up in a way that I didn't expect him to. It's also a bit about me not knowing him well enough, and writing him in a way that would work for me, for instance. So again, I think the timing was very unfortunate. I do think, and that was also my intent with the name change, is that it offers protection both ways. It offers the festival organizers protection because you're not getting associated with somebody who's doing his own thing, and that person is being protected from anything that somebody else might be doing where he gets associated with them. And I don't think that's necessarily fair on either party, right? Because you guys are doing your own thing, he's doing his own thing, and that should be separate from each other, and everybody should have their own freedom to be able to express themselves in whatever way they see fit. Because at that time we also had and it's not something you can make hard that was necessarily related, but somebody did get locked out of a YouTube account as well. Around the same time the complaints came in, right? And so at that time, you don't know what the fallout's gonna be. Are people getting strikes on their accounts? Might they be locked out from YouTube or Gmail or whatever? So again, for me, it was all about offering protection both ways, and still leaving people freedom to express themselves as they see fit.
Well, and in some ways, in the heat of it, before we knew what was happening, because there was a point where it's like, we don't even know if we can actually have the festival and it's a week out. Like there was still somewhat up in the air. Like it felt like you were drowning. You're just trying to like, the boat is sinking, patch up as many holes as you can. It's hard to figure out which fire to put out first. And, I think we did what we could in the moment, but yeah, communication's always going to be hard. And like, I have no problem being associated with Chad. I don't think anything that he produced, or what was done. I mean, it was certainly edgy, but I don't think it was perceived the way it was, meant to be. I think it was misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm.
It was purposely misinterpreted by people who were looking for something to misinterpret it. Going back to the activist thing is like, there will always be people out there who are going to nitpick and stuff. And I think Paul and I know this a little bit better because we live in the state capital of California, where there's quite a few of these people, and we all know people who answer phones in the government. And so people will complain about anything, and you will recognize people complaining multiple times about different, completely unrelated things, but they do it in an incredibly predictable manner because they're always on the same side of things. And, those are the types of people, if they complain all the time, you can't take them very seriously. But when you build a relationship with somebody and you know them for a very long time and they complain once about something, well, then you better take what they say really important that time. Because if they're not the type of person that complains and they have a reasonable, that you build up capital and then you choose when and where to spend it, social capital, and it matters. And sure, there's all these philosophical ideas of argue the fact of the matter and not the person, but most things in life are pretty arbitrary is the wrong word, but subjective is maybe the right word. Mm-hmm. Like most of your social decisions, who you're going to marry, all these other things, like they're based off of so many unique parts of people are so unique and such strange creatures that it's got to be subjective at some level, because you're never going to come up with a perfect list and have that list work flawlessly every time. And then if people just call you stupid or people are insulting you because, say, the person you end up marrying doesn't have everything that's on that list, then that person's that's not a realistic complaint. Again, it's a nitpicky complaint, which doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong, but you just got to take that with a grain of salt, I think. I do have to wrap up in just a couple of minutes, so I think if everyone wants to give, those will be my closing words, and if everyone else wants to close out, please do.
Matthias, do you have any last things, burning statements?
No, it's kind of late here, and I'm kind of tired. But no, I think thanks for the discussion. I think it went well, and as we said at the beginning, I think. After all, the event was a success, and all people who were there loved it. And the videos will come out soon, and people can have a look themselves. And I'm looking forward to the next one. Yeah.
Dennis?
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I love the event. I think we had a wonderful time there. I think so much good came from it. So much more good is gonna come from it still. With estuaries happening and meetups and stuff like that. Even all the drama that occurred afterwards. I mean, it sucks in the moment. having to argue with everybody. But everything that has happened since, I think, is also good in general, because it helps people more accurately find their way in this little corner of the internet, and makes them reflect on what we've been doing, makes them reflect on what they've been doing, and how all of those pieces fit together. It makes them think about how they should go forward. So like I said, I think all in all, even the drama is good.
Yeah, I'll agree with that statement. I think, what ended up, even with all of the all of the stress and the uncomfortability that came with what happened, I'm grateful for all the good that's coming from it still. And we will do this again, at least once. Hopefully, I want to do more, but at least once. And if you really want to know what happens at Bridges of Meaning Festival, well, the talks, if this goes public, the talks will be out probably by then, so you can watch them. And you won't know everything, but it'll certainly give you a taste of what happened. So thank you so much for watching. I've included all of the links to the Bridges of Meaning Festival talks below. But as always, I will close with a serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.